We love supporting and promoting the creators of musical theater throughout the world, and we would love to have your support as well. Go to musicaltheaterradio.com and click on the Become a Patron button, because a supportive community is a strong community. Good day, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Be Our Guest here on Musical Theater Radio. I am your host, as always, Jean-Paul Yovanov. Now, as most of you know, we are living in crazy times right now, unprecedented times. But no matter what is thrown at us in the theater world, we will never die. You know what? Theater may slow down and it might get tough, but as they say in Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, I will survive. And so we will continue to speak with people from the musical theater world, including our next guest. I'd like to welcome the multi-talented Ashley Griffin to the show. Ashley, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ashley. It's great to have you on.
It's great to be here.
So how you holding up before we get into the actual interview with all the world that, well, maybe it'll be done by the time this airs. Maybe
gosh. I would hope. I mean, it's not great. I mean, I am a Broadway artist, so the day that all the Broadway shows shut down, I lost all of my income. So I also teach occasionally at Columbia and NYU, and then those shut down too. So I'm living off of zero income. If anybody would like my Venmo handle, donations are being accepted.
See, I was lucky. This radio station makes me no money, so I was already at zero.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
So I had nowhere to go but up from that.
Oh, gotta get you some sponsors because your station's amazing.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. I'm doing what I can. All right. So I start every interview the same way. I always start, give me your 30-second bio. Who is Ashley in 30 seconds?
Great. So I was born in Los Angeles, California. I was born knowing that this is exactly what I wanted to do. When I was 6 years old, I declared I wanted to be the first female Anthony Newley. So that should tell you something about me. I'm a performer, singer, dancer, actor. I am a writer, and I also direct. I went to New York University to School of the Arts, where I have a degree, and I now teach on occasion. And then I graduated and I live in New York and make my career in New York. So that's, and I guess interesting tidbit, I'm the first person in history to be nominated for a major award for both playing and directing Hamlet, which sounds like I made it up, but it's true. There were articles about it. So that, I guess, is me in a very tiny nutshell.
Very nice. And you had an extra 6 seconds. So,
well, I apologize.
That's okay. We can save that to the end of the show. You can tack on 6 seconds at the end.
Great.
So you're 6 years old. What made you want to do that? What did you attend a show or something like that?
Well, I mean, I do not believe that he was still around doing things by the time I was born. I'm a youngling. No, I always loved performing. Like, I was the kid who all I ever wanted to do was put on shows in the living room. And there's actually a really great story that my mom tells that of the moment she knew I was going to be a performer, where when I was like, I don't know, maybe barely 2, was still kind of talking in baby talk a little bit, like, normal English and baby talk. And I would stand by the front door with my index finger extended, and I would just be talking in baby talk, but like the same sounds, the same inflection, the same motions with my hand over and over and over again. And finally my mom was like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "The Blue Fairy monologue from Pinocchio." Now, where I heard this word, we do not know. And she was like, "What?" And so I took her inside, I put on Pinocchio, and I was doing the Blue Fairy, "Now Pinocchio, you prove yourself brave, truthful." And it was the same vocal inflections. My finger was my wand, the same physical movements, just in baby talk. And my mom was like, "Oh no, she's going to be an actor." But it was always what I wanted to do. And my mom has always been unbelievably supportive. She's like the best mom you could ever have. And so when I was like 6, she got me a video of old Broadway performances on the Ed Sullivan Show. So it had like Julie Andrews doing, Camelot and My Fair Lady and whatnot. And dead in the middle was Anthony Newley doing Who Can I Turn To?
Mhm.
And I had never seen a performer like that. His performance was captivating. And it said somewhere on there that, he was the first person ever to be nominated for Tony Awards for Best Actor, Best Book, and Best Score for the same show in the same year.
Mhm.
And I was like, because I'd also always written too, and I was like, that's what I want to do. I'm going to be the first female Anthony Newley. And no one knew what I was talking about, but that's where that came from. So
That's hilarious.
yep. Yep, shows you what kind of child I was and continue to be.
Hey, I can't say I was much different. My parents always took us to see Gilbert and Sullivan every year.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, so all my friends are like, "What the heck are you talking about? HMS what?"
yep.
So
Mhm.
that's fine by me. That's awesome. That
Yeah,
and as you said from Hamlet, you did something pretty much the same as that.
yeah.
You got to be the multi talented person.
No,
So
thank you.
no problem. So you're in LA and you're growing up.
Mhm.
So did you go to school out there? Or, I can't remember what you said because I have a
Yeah,
terrible memory.
no, I did. Well, I did. I went to a performing arts high school out here, the
Oh.
Hamilton Academy of Music, which was one of the most extraordinary things. I feel weird talking about it now a little bit only because through horrible LAUSD politics, they ruffled things up there, and the program is not what it
Mm,
was anymore.
yeah.
So, in all honesty, I don't really know if I can recommend people go there now. I hopefully can. I just don't know the program very well. But when
Mhm.
I was there, it was the premier program. I will take on Loxa and OSHA any day of the week. But it was extraordinary, and so that was phenomenal. I then went to the Boston Conservatory of Music for like a week, and then transferred to NYU's Tisch School of the Arts, which is where I have my degree from.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So I went to a regular high school. So what's it like to go to an arts high school for performing? Is it like Fame, like the
Oh
TV
gosh.
show, or the musical, or
Um,
what's it? You probably get asked that a lot, but
yeah.
what's
Well,
it
it's not as dramatic as Fame,
like?
but so basically the structure of it when I was there was we had 7 periods a day, and of those periods, you had to meet certain academic requirements. And one of the additional things of our school was we were like the top provider of AP classes, so we actually had some phenomenal classes. We were the only school that offered AP music theory and things like that. So you took all your academic classes, but then 3 or 4 of your periods every day, depending on what you needed, were performing classes. And so basically, you came in with a major, and we had very unusual majors at our school. We're one of the only schools that has musical theater as its actual own separate major.
Wow.
We were the first school to have electronic music as a major. So basically, you came in basically knowing what you wanted your emphasis to be. And at freshman orientation, you would audition for your classes. So you'd go to the musical theater department, you do an audition, you go to the vocal department, the drama department, the dance department, and then you would be notified what level classes you placed into. And then you would juggle and arrange your schedule based on what you wanted to be doing. The big drama performance, if you were cast in the drama, was always 6th period, and the big musical theater performance was always 7th period.
Hmm.
So yeah, so then you basically just went around juggling your schedule, and we had the most incredible principal of the academy, Jeff Kaufman, who would always go out of his way to make things accessible for the students and to help figure out your schedule as it needed to be. And you were around a lot of people who all loved what you loved. You
Yeah.
weren't the nerdy theater kid. It was serious. It was passionate. We were also in LA, so a lot of us were working professionally as well. So it was a very serious thing. And I don't know. It was great because we were sort of all in this together. We all took our academic classes together as well. We all got really good grades, partially because we loved school. We were motivated to be there, but you had to get a certain GPA in order to qualify to be in the production. So like
Yeah.
everybody in the music academy had at least at bare minimum like a C plus average. Most people were higher than that. And there was a lot of competition like the week that auditions for the show were, and then after that you were really supportive of each other. And it was for me personally, it was a dream and it was a savior. So I highly recommend it. There's a lot of people who went who didn't end up going into the arts professionally, who still got a lot out of it. But my class, like most of the people I went to school with, are all on Broadway.
Wow.
So it was a really phenomenal experience. And Richard Schreier was the head of the musical theater department, and he's still one of the most extraordinary teachers I've ever worked with. And Yeah, you get treated like an adult in the best sense of like, we believe that you are at the level of Broadway professionals, and that's how you're going to be treated. So you weren't talked down to, and we all rose to that level, and it was very, very, very special.
I think, and the way you're talking about it, it sounds like it would have been an incredible experience. But
Yeah,
like you said, not everybody went into, the arts and theater
right.
afterwards. And I think people should have to take these things, because a lot of the skills we learn in theater and music and dance, etc., can be translated into, quote unquote, the real world,
Oh, a
the
hundred
arts
percent.
world. And I don't think people above education level, like the government, etc., who regulate the education system, seem to realize this, that
Oh
we
my
use
gosh,
our
no.
skills every day more than
Absolutely.
and pretty much all the other skills we learn
Yeah.
in school.
Well, it's interesting because I grew up at a really wonderful rep company out here called the Santa Monica Playhouse, and I started there when I was 5 years old. And because I'd been there for so long, I mean, the nice thing about a rep company is it's kind of all hands on deck. Like, you get thrown
Mhm.
into directing, and you get thrown into teaching, and you get thrown into a show that you've never rehearsed, but like somebody's out and like you're around. So it gives you these amazing skills, but because of that, because I've been around there for so long, I started teaching philosophy that the vast majority of kids that were coming in to take their children's classes, we're not going to grow up to be professional theater
Yeah.
artists, but there was an emphasis on collaboration and support and community and public speaking, and those things were really, really important. And um, yeah, I think these classes are hugely important for any functioning adult in life. Um, I hear about corporate seminars now of just like, how do you give a speech and how do you collaborate? And it's like, these are all the things that you study when you're a theater artist. So
Exactly.
yeah.
We're way ahead of the game when it
Yep.
comes to this sort of thing.
Yep.
I do have another question about the high school itself. Was there obviously there was the singing, the dance, and the
Mhm.
acting, etc. Was there a tech program specifically, or did you guys have to learn to do all the tech stuff as
Oh
well?
no, there was a phenomenal tech program, and it was an actual major. People came to the school specifically for tech. And we rented a lot of our costumes and sets and whatnot from the Broadway productions. So
Wow.
there would be load-in, and we'd be getting Broadway sets, and the head of the tech program would be taking all the technical students around, showing them how they were constructed, showing how to reconstruct them, showing how to take care of them. Um, with all the costumes, the parents obviously helped significantly, and they were amazing, but people were, how do you make alterations, and how do you see what they did on these, and how were things costumes rigged for quick changes? And it was a very, very serious thing. So it wasn't like the actors pulling, tech off
Mhm.
because we had incredible tech students that did all of that. We had amazing orchestras that were from our musicians. I went to high school with Reeve Carney, and Reeve Carney was in the pit of all of our shows,
Wow.
along with his amazing brother Zane. So yeah, no, every aspect of theater was taken very, very seriously, and there were people there specifically to major in all of those different areas.
Did you get to cross over, like as an actor, to get to do some of the tech, and the tech to do some of the,
You
just to
certainly
experience it?
Yeah, you certainly could if you wanted to. I was very busy with a lot of other different things,
Mhm.
and tech was never my personal focus. That being said, I have growing up at the rep company, there was a similar crossover where you had to learn other things. So I had
Mhm.
learned stage management, I'd learned house management. I did a summer program at Northwestern where my tech focus was lighting, where you learn all the details about lighting, which has
Yeah.
held me in very good stead as a director now, because I can say, bring the percentage of circuit one up to 25% or
Yeah.
whatnot, and I can communicate with people. Um, so that's all to say that we were definitely educated, but we didn't like have to serve on a tech crew
Mhm.
because we had people that's what they did and that's what they liked to do.
Yeah.
So
I I totally understand it there. I always feel that the best actors or performers know a little bit about tech,
oh,
because
for
then,
sure.
because I'm a producer and I direct at an independent theater at York University here in Toronto,
Hmm.
and all the students there have to do everything. They
Oh, for
have to
sure.
paint the sets. They don't necessarily have to always, but the smart ones will do it. And I love working with
Yeah.
them, because you can tell which ones, oh, to find their light, they know what the light
Yep.
is. They know where it is. They know how it works, and just simple things like that. So,
Oh, I agree with that 100%. I do know that sound was something we really learned about, and we were taught about, how do wireless mics function, and how do you
yeah.
change them out, and how do you put them on. And so I would say that everybody who went to the school definitely was educated in the tech side. I got maybe more of that education through like the Northwestern Sheriff's Program and through my work at my rep company, but definitely making sure that artists knew how that worked was something that was important. So
Cool. And obviously you took those skill sets with you as you moved forward.
yep,
So let's move forward. All right. So
yep,
what did you always want to go to New York, or did you think you
yeah.
would stay in LA and work? So you wanted to go to New York.
Yeah, and I mean, the nice thing is, I can, be in LA when gigs come up, and occasionally they do, but I always knew I wanted to be in the theater world primarily. And the first time I ever went to New York, I had this weird feeling of like finally coming home.
Mhm.
So I know other people who had very different experiences. There was somebody at Boston Conservatory who went to New York for the first time and was in tears and was like, I hate it here. I have to like reconfigure my entire life because I do not want to live in New York. But I always knew I wanted to be in New York. And so it was great that I went to NYU and then I was just able to stay. So
Nice.
yeah.
So you graduated from NYU. You stayed in New
Mhm.
York. What was the first thing you got as a job?
As a performer or as a writer?
Whichever was first.
Well, I guess the first notable thing is I collaborated with Stephen Schwartz my senior year at NYU on a voluntary senior thesis on the dichotomy between critical and audience reception in commercial theater, which I thought was something that needed to be spoken about.
Yeah.
Because while I was in college, I got to be the editorial assistant for Carol DeGere, who wrote the first biography of Stephen. And through that, I got to read every review that had ever been written of Stephen's work, and also a lot of fan letters that had been written. And these were not normal things. I mean, the reviews, I hate to say it, and it hurts my heart, but Stephen himself, kind of in the commercial Broadway world, has never gotten a good review. His shows
Oh,
have, but he personally hasn't. And I could quote you some pretty harsh things that were clearly meant to be mean. And yet he was getting these fan letters from people that were like, you changed my life. Like my wife and I were about to get a divorce. We went to see Pippin and were so moved by the story that we decided to
wow.
give it one more try. And we've now been married for 50 years. And so I was, as somebody who wanted to be a commercial theater artist, I'm like, wait a minute. Critics and audiences do not seem to be aligned. And
Nope.
there seems to be this huge difference between people being deeply moved by a show and what critics are saying. And I think that as the next generation of artists, um, we need to be looking at that. And NYU wouldn't offer like a class on it. So I was like, well, can I do a voluntary senior thesis independent study? And they said, sure. And I found a teacher to sponsor me. And that turned into my writing an original musical through collaboration with Stephen, that then got picked up by the York Theater Company and connected me to my incredible mentor, Gabriel Barry. So that all happened like while I was still a senior. And that was a very big deal. As a performer right out of college, I got cast as alongside Jason Alexander in the Capitol Fourth in DC.
Wow.
So like a month after I graduated, I was dancing with Jason on a national stage, which was huge. So those were sort of the first two big things that happened. And then things just sort of kept going from there.
Very nice.
But I was that kid who I had been working professionally as an artist since I was 5, so I hit the ground running. I was that brat at NYU who showed up with an agent and an equity card. So I was really pounding the pavement from the second that I got here.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to talk a little bit more, but before we talk about you and your career, a little bit about the critics, that
Yeah,
thesis you did, because I'm always talking about that. I read, the critics' reviews of things, and you can find one show and you can have 1 star, and then the same show it's 5-star, and
right.
and then you got people who love it and you got people who hate it, because I go in a group with people and it's
Right.
all over the place. And I somebody posted before whether critics are I don't know if they said it was necessary, or whether we should have a star rating or anything like that.
Right.
What's your opinion on that sort of thing?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. So I now have a podcast on the Onstage Network. It's called Stage Directions. It's also available on iTunes.
Okay.
But the first episode, I basically turned my senior thesis into the first episode. So you can learn a lot more details about my thoughts about this because I wrote a 40-page thesis on it. In essence, these are my general thoughts. I think that the role of a critic, what a critic is supposed to be in an ideal world, is an educated professional who has an emphasis in their knowledge on theater, who basically goes to all the shows because we're not able to, and then can report back on the experience that an audience member is most likely to have should they go and see a particular show. Basically meaning, theater costs a lot of money. The average theater goer is not able to see everything playing on Broadway all the time. And it's a trusted person who you can be like, okay, well, I will most likely have X experience if I go and see this show. I feel like it's what the greatest critics like Roger and Ebert and whatnot, and Siskel and Ebert kind of were. I think that's why they were so trusted. It's because we may disagree with them, but in general, they're educated, they're here for us, and they're here to educate us on this. However, I feel like that has changed significantly. I think with the rise of bloggers, with the rise of the internet, but even before then, I think that, first of all, a lot of critics working in theater are not theater artists. They're people who never learned about theater. They never studied theater. They were just given the assignment, and they could have just as easily been assigned to be a food critic or an art critic or whatnot. That's certainly not true for everybody, but for some it is.
Yes.
So we're talking now about people who maybe aren't completely educated in the theater, and B, whose primary goal now is not necessarily helping theater goers, it's to sell papers. So the more entertaining their review is, the more papers they're going to sell, the more readers they're going to get. So now the goal becomes entertainment, not serving the show and the audiences. And I think that the other thing that we have is we now have thousands and thousands of critics. I think show score is really cool. We have friends that are writing things on Facebook. We have bloggers. We have all these different things. So basically, I think the way it's changed is it's up to you who you think you're going to trust more. And for some people, that might be a critic who they tend to agree with. For some people, it might be their friend who writes a really good blog or has a podcast. So I don't think that critics are as necessary as they were back in the day. I mean, back in the 30s, you would go to an opening night party and you would anxiously read the Times review. And if it was good, it would literally be like, we have a hit. And if it was bad, it would literally be, we're closing. I mean, shows no longer function in that all or nothing way based on what the New York Times review is. I think Addams Family is a great example of a show that did not get good critical reception, but audiences loved it. So I think it's changed a little bit. I certainly believe in critics. I think that critics, when they're functioning right, are wonderful and very necessary. I certainly seek out certain professional critics to read their points of view on a show, whether I've seen a show or not. But I think that we really need to get back to the inherent goal of what a critic is supposed to be, as opposed to trying to out-entertain each other.
For sure.
So that's my 2 cents.
No problem. Yeah. And all of it made sense.
Well,
A great answer. Whenever I see a show, I usually review it on my my program the next day. And if it's a community theater show, I will never critique the performers, because that's not fair unless they were really good. Right. I won't just say anything about them. I will critique the show, and whether it's a good show or not, that's a whole different story. But if it's professional, I will critique perhaps the performers a little bit more. And I always look at it, like you said, there's so many people out there who come from it. I think they critique from an emotional rather than a clinical way, where, you and I went to school for this.
Right.
We can see the little things and we can point those out. But I always end every single one of my reviews. You know what? My 2 cents ain't worth the paper they're printed on, right? Just go and see a show. That's the most important thing, and make a decision for yourself. Because you know what? You're not right. You're not wrong. Just go and support us.
Well, the other aspect is I've actually worked as a critic for Theater Online. And the way that I went about it is any criticism that I felt I needed to make, I wanted to phrase in such a way that it was helpful information for the creatives. That hey, maybe this wasn't as effective. I think that they were trying to go for this. It wasn't as effective because of X, Y, and Z. Things that weren't meant to trash anybody. They weren't meant to shame anybody. Yep. It's like advice for going in the future. And in all honesty, and I know not everybody has this luxury, if I saw a show that really really there was nothing good that I could write about it, I would write to my boss and I would say, it's not going to benefit anybody if I write a review of this show. So I'd rather opt out. And fortunately, they always let me do that because I was never interested in trashing anybody. I was interested in giving hopefully helpful feedback for everybody. So, yeah.
And I think that's fantastic and totally legit. I think we need more people like that who, you know, we are trying to actually help whoever's creating. We don't want to bash them. We want everybody to succeed. Right? There are communities. So
right.
Cool. All right. So back to you. back
to me. Enough about Horton. Let's talk about me.
Exactly. So you've gone on stage. You were with Jason Alexander. You were performing. What was your next big thing after
gosh.
that?
Well, I've worked on a lot of different things. And I think the thing I'm most proud of is the original pieces that I've been able to be a part of. But in terms of commercial things, like, you know, I've been a part of Wicked. I've, you know, been a part of, I did Hedda Gabler off Broadway. I've, in terms of touring things and whatnot, I've, you know, been a part of a lot of commercial shows. But I think the thing that I'm really the most proud of is creating original theater. And I guess as a performer, my Hamlet production is something that's unbelievably special to me. I also created the Twilight parody musical that became a commercial phenomenon when it played at New World Stages. So yeah, I've had sort of these landmark things. And then other than that, just, you know, keep pounding the pavement and doing all that. But I really do love working on good original material. And Hamlet was something that was unbelievably special to be a part of. And we're talking about bringing it back. And I hope that it does come back. Cool. But there's kind of nothing as intense as playing Hamlet, period, let alone in a production that you've directed. Because I remember having a moment before I walked out for the first time of being like, all of this is on me. Like if this goes well, that's great. But if it doesn't, there's literally nobody else to blame for anything bad in the show except for me. So there you go.
Well, obviously it went well.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate that it did go well. Very fortunate that it went well. Yeah.
So I'm on your website and I'm looking at the stuff you've written. So what else am I going to find information about you? so tell us about, you know, I'm reading it and your off-Broadway hit Trial. Was that the first big thing you did, or was there something before that? Or just tell us about Trial.
Well, I mean, my Twilight musical was what really put me on the map as a creator. Because I mean, that blew up. That made national news. I was having to, the day that it opened, I had to stay at a hotel under a fake name because my name was like gotten out. I mean, it was insane. And I also was working front of house at the theaters, which I had to stop doing because patrons were coming up and being like, wait, aren't you that person who wrote that Twilight show?
Wow.
So it was intense. I mean, it happened overnight. Like E! Entertainment was calling me, EW, Perez Hilton talked about us.
Holy cripes.
It was intense. So that was probably the first big thing that put me on the map. Trial is an unbelievably special piece, and it ran off Broadway. We're in talks for transfer, directed by the unbelievable Lori Petty, who most people know. She's on Orange is the New Black. She was Kit in A League of Their Own. She was Tank Girl.
Yep.
She discovered Jennifer Lawrence in her first film. She directed an incredible film called The Poker House, which if you haven't seen, go out and see it. But Lori directed the show, and it's a piece that's been in development for a while. It's very, very personal to me. It's a dark drama. My pieces tend to range from like really serious comedy like Twilight to like really dark and intense. And a lot of times people don't realize that I'm the one who wrote both of those things.
Yeah.
But there is darkness in my comedy, and there is humor in my dark stuff. But I do enjoy some dark magical realism. Trial takes place in an afterlife that's represented by a corporate office building. And it's about a young woman who's been waiting for 12 years for her paperwork to go through corporate bureaucracy so that she can move on. And one day she's approached by somebody from upper management who says, that the man who was indirectly responsible for her death has just died and the state of his soul is in question. And when that happens, there's a trial in the Justice Department. Someone from the upper level is the defense, somebody from the lower level is prosecution, and the person they did the most harm to in life serves as judge and jury. And in this case, it's this girl. And she wants nothing to do with it, but they're like, your paperwork will be expedited, so she goes. And the rest of the show is basically the court, all the evidence is presented kind of Our Town style by reliving scenes from their life. And I don't want to give away the big twist, but you find out a twist. And the whole piece it's about justice versus forgiveness. And it's a very personal piece for me. It got a lot of notoriety. I won the Well Life Network Award for it, as did Lori. I got a county commendation. Again, we're in talks for a transfer for it. It had a reading at Manhattan Theater Club. So it's a piece that's very close to my heart, and I very much hope that it comes back sooner rather than later.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Sounds incredible.
Thank you very much.
Nice. So let's move on to how I met you. Actually, I don't even remember how. I think I probably
discovered Lyra.
Yeah,
Lyra.
I probably on Twitter I saw it and then just reached out to you, or did you reach? I get confused now with all the shows and people I talk to. But let's talk about Lyra, a dark fairy tale, because that was the first show I got from you to put on the stations. Tell me about that.
Well, let me see. So I actually work a lot in the Cirque community.
Okay.
Ironically. I love circus. I grew up with Cirque du Soleil coming like a couple blocks away from me and setting up on Santa Monica Beach. So when I became an adult, I started training in like aerial acro and whatnot. And now a good deal of my friends are Cirque du Soleil performers. I've kind of become the honorary mascot of the Cirque community. And one of my dear friends and I, it was around the time of Spider-Man on Broadway, actually, and we got in a conversation about how in commercial theater, circus is kind of used as this extra sparkle on top of a show. It's not used as an equal vocabulary to advance the story, which always frustrated me because there's things that you can do and communicate through circus arts, whether that is aerial acrobatics or clowning, which I'll use the phrase physical comedy, scary people at kids' birthday parties. When I use the phrase clowning, I'm talking about Bill Irwin and David Shiner and Chaplin and all those amazing people. But all those forms are wonderful vocabularies to advance a scene in dancing. And they made a comment about how I was kind of the perfect person to write something like that because I existed in both worlds. We were also talking about Pippin, the revival of Pippin, which we both loved, and I think it was phenomenal. But Pippin can be done without circus arts. Yeah. It adds really cool things when you put them there, but you can do the show without circus arts. And so I started asking, well, is there a show that you could do where, like with West Side Story, if you took the dance out, you couldn't tell that story? Is there a way that you could do a show where if you took the circus out, you could no longer actually tell that story? So I decided I really wanted to write that and started thinking about what I could do. The original Hans Christian Andersen Little Mermaid story is my favorite story of all time. And no one has really ever properly adapted it. Shelley Duvall did in the 80s, which I adore them. But even that, there's a few little things, but that's probably the closest adaptation that's ever happened. But I've always really wanted to adapt the original Little Mermaid story. And so I just sort of dramaturgically started thinking about it. And I ended up writing the full libretto, which is not normally how a musical is written, but I sat down and wrote the entire libretto to it and adapted it. So basically with Lyra, it takes place in a 1930s Dust Bowl era circus that's a little Something Wicked This Way Comes-esque, where the illusionist is this sort of androgynous, omnipotent, magical being who's kind of the equivalent of the Sea Witch character, played by a male presenting actor who is using the entire thing as a front to collect people's souls, and didn't make a deal to be in the circus. She was born into it, and she's the singer. And whereas everybody else wants to run away and join the circus, she wants to run away and join real life. And the original story is actually very spiritual. A lot of people, lob criticisms at it about, like selling your voice for a man. That's not what it is at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's very spiritual. The mermaid, what she really wants is an immortal soul, because mer people don't have one. And we have this story, this character in these sort of Faustian bargains, and it becomes these questions about, like, what is a soul and what's the importance of a soul? And Lyra sings a lyric of, if souls are so precious, tell me, what are they for? And then it follows from there. She needs to escape. She ends up making a deal with Mr. Wednesday, but refuses to give him her soul. So he takes her voice instead, and she goes to the real world. And then the whole second act is about him trying to gain ownership over him and kind of becoming obsessed with her. And if you know the original story, it follows the original story. But then I basically kind of auditioned composers once the libretto was done, and auditioned some incredible people. And a friend of mine, Evan J. Newman, who is a wonderful performer in his own right. He was on Broadway as a child in like everything, and he's now a musical director and composer. He was the musical director on the Broadway national tour of American Idiot. He worked on the tours of Broadway Cinderella and Mamma Mia. He's done a lot of amazing things. And he heard about this, and he was like, I don't know if my style is right for it, but I'd love to throw my hat in the ring. So he sent back some music, and it was phenomenal. And I asked him to work on it. So that's how we started collaborating. And now we're each other's go-to musical theater collaborators. And the score of Lyra is a combination of traditional musical theater, of pop rock, there's prog rock in there. There's French, kind of a French sound. There's Cirque du Soleil sounding music, like a European circus aesthetic. So it kind of has a score unlike anything you've ever heard. We had a sold out development at the Triad. We had a sold out performance at 54 Below. We've been artists in residence of the Access Theater Company for the past year. We've been working with the amazing director, Rachel Klein, who many know from Red Roses, Green Gold, the Grateful Dead musical at MCC. And the thing with this show is it's a big budget show. This isn't a show that you can kind of just go into a black box and do a workshop of it. Like you need a proper workshop, because there's serious circus in it, and there's serious band and music and stuff in it. So that's kind of the general rundown of Lyra at this moment in time. So I really like it.
It sounds really cool. It would be quite the experience to sit in the. Now, would it be more of a proscenium type, or a box, or a theater in the round, do you think? Or ultimate thought? It's
definitely something that could accommodate any different aesthetic. In my fantasy world, it would be in a proscenium space, something like the Winter Garden, that's like beautifully, like with all that beautiful crystal and everything in it, where the sides of the proscenium are made where basically the inside of the theater is made to look like you're in a circus tent. And the first act of the show takes place in the circus, and the second act takes place in the real world. So all those beautiful trappings literally disappear. So I think I'd love to do it in a proscenium setting. It's also something theoretically that you could do as a site-specific thing, like what Great Comet originally did, and actually set up a circus tent somewhere.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of really cool options. If any producers are out there listening, we're very open. But it's not really something that you can do in like a 50-person black box space. You need the air room and the fly space and whatnot for it. So.
When you were creating the show, did you find it easy to work with a composer? Obviously, you knew who he was already, so that kind of helped. But did you find it, and how did it work? Did you write the lyrics first, the music? How did that process work for you?
Well, and now I've worked with many different composers, and I had already done Twilight and stuff. I'm a very fast writer. Like I can turn out a full libretto, and by libretto, I mean the entire script and all the lyrics in like 9 days, which is not normal.
Yeah.
So with Evan and I, the way it happened with Lyra, because I wrote the entire libretto before I had a composer, because I didn't want to like lose the idea.
Yeah.
And then he came on board, and it was like, great, go write the score, go write all the music. And I actually did contribute some music to Lyra. There's a song in it, Happy Ending, that I wrote the music for, but everything else is Evan. And that's kind of how we work now, because we've now written multiple things together, and I'm a very fast writer, and it doesn't work for everybody, but it works for us, where I will we'll talk, but I will literally go off and I will write the full libretto. I'll write the script and all the lyrics, and then hand him a finished libretto. and then he'll go off and write the music, and then it will be a conversation and things will get tweaked and whatnot.
For sure.
But that's generally how it works. I'm working on another musical with Patrick Burns about the life of Hans Christian Andersen. Are we sensing a theme here? And for that, it was pretty similar too. I mean, I went away and wrote the libretto and most of the lyrics. There were a couple lyrics that he contributed. But I don't know, that tends to be how I work. I've worked the other way too. I mean, I've had people hand me music and then I've written lyrics to it, but because I am such a book writer, like I'm not a lyricist who's trying to write a book. Like I am a script writer.
Yep.
So dramaturgy is very important to me. Structure is very important to me. And I think that the more you do that up front, the less you're in a situation later of like, oh, I like this song, but it doesn't work now. And I think we need to add a whole other thing. Like there's less of that you have to do later. There's some, but there's less because you already have the structure in place. So when I write, in general, with the people that I write with, it tends to be me doing a lot of dramaturgical work and writing the majority of it on the front end and then handing it to the composer to mess with, always communicating with them throughout. But that's just me and the people I work with. Very few people work that way, but it's just what seems to work with me and my collaborators and composers. So.
Well, it seems to be working, so I'd say stick with it.
You're
welcome. So now we have two musicals of yours that we play on the station. Mm-hmm. We have Spectacle.
Yes,
a little bit different than this one.
Definitely different than Lyra, although ironically a couple similar themes. But Spectacle kind of gets back a little bit to my Twilight roots in terms of parody and that kind of musical comedy. So I had like 3 years of going. I was very fortunate. I went from show to show to show with no break, but they were all like literally rip your heart out on the stage, sob, go through like intense abuse as your character. So I needed a little break from that. So it was nice to get back to something with a little bit more levity. And it's an idea that I've had since college, and I finally found the right person to sort of write it with. And it's just hilarious and fun. So with some good messages behind it. So.
And what's the plot of Spectacle?
So Spectacle is a very meta show. It's been described as title of show meets the play that goes wrong. So Evan and I, who wrote it, are in it, and we play versions of ourselves. So the idea is that we are struggling writers. I think that Evan and Ashley on stage are struggling maybe a little bit more than the Evan and Ashley in real life. But they have recently been recruited by a big mega mogul producer named Frank Reiger, who is launching a $200 million mega musical called The Sound of Love. Can we have a more generic title? There's also a title song in the show. The Sound of Love is set to music. And Evan and Ashley have been plucked from obscurity to write this show. And so the actual show is the industry presentation.
Yeah.
So it's meant to be done. You could in a black box, you could do it in a studio, you could literally do it anywhere, because all that you need is Evan's keyboard, and then I can fit all of the props in like a small suitcase. So the idea is that we can literally pack the show up in a trunk and do it anywhere. So if anybody out there wants us to come, it's like just us and a suitcase. We can literally do it in your backyard. It's delightful. So the idea is that the audience is treated as all big, important Broadway folks. Along with their program, they're given an investor info packet, which is hilarious if you actually go through and read it. We spent a lot of time on that. But this is the industry presentation, and we're wearing show shirts, and we are talking the audience through the show and doing select numbers. And this thing just gets more and more ridiculous. So there's 5 chandeliers that fall. There's live crocodiles on stage. The end of Act 1 is that a full-size ocean liner sinks on stage. The entire theater floods. The audience is given mask and regulators, and the opening of Act 2 is a literal underwater ballet. And so it's us talking you through the show and then performing numbers from it, with getting edicts from Frank along the way. And then Frank's niece comes and helps us out with some specific numbers, and she's signed on to play the comic lead, even though she probably shouldn't be. But the ultimate message of the show, besides just being really funny and sort of poking fun a little bit at what's been going on commercially with Broadway theater since the 80s, is we start to have moral qualms about what we're doing and about what's going on. And, the idea of, like how many amazing shows could $200 million produce, shows that deserve to be seen. And it actually turns into a really nuanced and complex conversation about commercial art, because basically my character is the one who's especially horrified and is like, we need to stop. And Evan's the one who starts making really good arguments on the other side about, like, well, we work inside the system, and, if we leave this behind, we're going to be starving on the street. And there's not really answers posited in the show. It's not something that comes up with like a definitive moral statement, but it asks a lot of questions that people are not really publicly asking right now about the current state of art. And then what makes it really enjoyable is, in the meantime, where the two of us with just a keyboard are trying to play every role in this $200 million musical and sell it. And we do a Q&A with the audience at one point. We have to rewrite something in the middle of the show because Frank thinks it's too serious. We get one song left in there from the original version of the show that was what like Evan and I wrote before it got taken over by Frank. That's like the one really beautiful, moving song.
Yeah.
So it's sort of this very meta, funny exploration of the purpose of art and what is going on these days. So, awesome. Yeah.
And have you been able to put that up on its feet at any point?
Yeah, we had a sold out little mini run at the Triad Theater. Again, completely sold out, got some wonderful, wonderful response. And we were in the process of looking for the next steps for it when all this insanity started to hit, because right now is not the best time to be producing a new show. And all of my other projects have kind of been put on hold too. So, but yeah, the idea is we would love to be like a sit down somewhere, because the show's like an hour and a half, little under, no intermission, very inexpensive to do. So if anybody wants us to come to your theater or hometown and do Spectacle the Musical, we absolutely 100% can. We also have a cast album that's available on iTunes. That's been really fun. So yeah.
Very cool. Well, congratulations on all the stuff that you've been able to have on its feet and get.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing it with us, and so I can share it with all of our listeners as well. Of
course. Well, thank you so much for all of your support. It's really wonderful, and I don't see anybody doing what you're doing, and it's really greatly needed. So thank you. And I wish that I'd had somebody like you when I was growing up and in high school. So
I'll do what I can, and I will keep at it and keep promoting. Well, if a show is good, like your stuff, it's easy to promote. That's not a problem. So I want to thank you so much for talking with me today, Ashley. That was
thank you.
Come on. But before you go, I always ask 3 questions of all our guests.
Yes.
Now, if you've listened to the show before, there's no right or wrong answers, but there's a wrong answer to these questions.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So, question number 1.
Yes.
Weber or Sondheim?
Sondheim, but Weber's underrated.
Okay. Cool. Any particular reason why Sondheim's just ahead of Weber?
I wouldn't say just ahead of Weber. He's
in yours. Okay.
Well, so here's the thing. Sondheim, I think, revolutionized the art form. Not that that's the defining characteristic. I think we can only sort of speak for ourselves, but I think Sondheim has done really amazing things with the art form. I think that he's tackling very, very complex themes and ideas. I know his work has had a profound impact on my life and has really, really deeply moved me. Andrew Lloyd Webber is a phenomenal artist. And I think what he did was he kind of revolutionized the commercial theater. Theater wouldn't be what it is today without him. And he has created work that is kind of timeless and has really stood the test of time. And I think that, sometimes it's easy to make fun of him for various reasons that I understand, but there's a reason Phantom's been running as long as it has, and he really has tapped into something in the zeitgeist, and his music is lovely. Like, I remember when I saw School of Rock for the first time, which was the first like new score of his I'd heard in a long time. And I'm like, he can write a pop song, So I think sometimes we undervalue him because we have a really real problem, I think, in the world, but especially the industry, of if something's commercial, it can't be artistically good.
Yeah.
And I think that that's ridiculous. And I think that the best things marry both. So I think sometimes he's underrated in the community because he is so commercial. That being said, I think that Sondheim is technically better at the craft. And I think that the things that he writes about are things that more resonate with me more. Yeah. So given a choice, I'm going to put a Sondheim album in before Andrew Lloyd Webber, but that's not to say that I don't love me some Phantom of the Opera and love me some some of his work.
Yeah. If you just took them as pure composers, music-wise, there is no comparison. There's
Right.
nothing even close to the same. So that's why I
Right.
love asking this question. It's
Yeah.
open-ended and there is really no right or wrong answer, but you got the right answer.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
Side note, wait, you'll enjoy this. So when I took musical theater history at NYU, you know, every musical theater history class asks the essay question, what is the most important musical in Broadway history?
Oh yeah.
And of course they want Oklahoma or Showboat. Like that's what they all want. I was so bored with having to talk about that. I went to the teacher, and the teacher and I had a good rapport, and I said, look, do you want me to write about Oklahoma or Showboat, or does it not matter what I write about as long as I defend it?
Yeah.
And he knew that I was like the Hermione Granger of the class. I mean, seriously, my podcast is like, the title is like, I'm the Hermione Granger of the theater world. The teachers called me Hermione Granger. And he looked at me intrigued and he said, you can write about whatever you want as long as you defend it.
Yeah.
And I wrote a full-length essay about how, and now let me preface this. This is not meant to be a joke. Like, I legitimately love the show. Is it the most important musical in theater history? 100% not. But I wrote an entire essay about how Starmites, the musical, was the most...
Starmites? Oh my
God. Because I wanted to challenge myself. Like, I wrote an entire essay about why that was the most important musical in the musical theater canon, and I got an A on it. So
wow.
Yeah.
How many of my listeners are you going to know what Starmites is?
Starmites is amazing. And side note, Gabriel Barry, who's my collaborator, which I always say, if there's anything you like in my direction, attribute it to him. If there's anything you don't like, I take full responsibility. If you ever have the opportunity to be in a room with Gabriel Barry, do it. He is a genius and the nicest person you'll ever meet. But he is an actor as well, and he was nominated for a Tony for playing Trinculus in Starmites.
Wow.
And it's a phenomenal show. It's super fun. It's not Showboat, you know.
No, it's not. But
it's really, really fun. So I wrote like an entire essay in college about the importance of Starmites. So
that's awesome. The fact that you would even choose Starmites would get you at least a B. Right there from me.
There you go.
Awesome. All right. I didn't see it go in that direction. That's awesome.
Yep.
Good.
Okay.
Question number 2.
Yeah.
Are mermaids real?
All right. So you're asking the wrong person, because I'm going to give you like a thesis about all of these. So if I'm really getting analytical about it, I personally think that all mythic beings have some basis in reality, however you want to take that reality. But I think that, you know, the world has, I'm not saying that, like, you know, manticores were running around the world at some point, but I think that hundreds and thousands of years ago, I don't believe that mythologies spring up out of nowhere. And whether it's tapping into something that is emotionally true versus something that's literally true, or whether it's tapping into creatures like manatees that were mistaken for mermaids, or whether it's animals that we just don't have around anymore. I think that what is true about mermaids and a lot of fantasy characters that we really feel a kinship for and have survived for so long, and that we relate to for a reason and we hold very dear, there's something in the spirit of humanity that I think that they have to be true to some degree. Whether that means that mermaids are literally swimming out there, that's a question for another time. But I think that what is intrinsically valuable and important about mermaids, I think there's something true in that. So let me suffice it to leave it there. But there is also a lot of really great mythology around mermaids that you can read. And I also find it interesting that they exist in every culture in the world, kind of, you know, Joseph Campbell style. So I'm not going to say that there's nothing there, and I would love nothing more than if they were. So
nice.
There you go.
Good answer.
Thank you.
And that is correct answer.
Thank you.
So there we are. All right. Question number 3. Most important question of the all.
Okay.
Audiences eating food in the theater, yes or no?
No. So I've worked front of house. I've worked probably every job you can have front of house. Mm-hmm. And you are welcome to eat before you come to the theater. If you need a snack for whatever reason, whether it's just because you happen to be hungry or because you have a medical issue, there are lots of snacks that are sold there. Most theaters have lounges and lobbies where you can eat. Most shows in general are about an hour and 15 minutes. Then you get a 15-minute intermission, and then like an hour and some second act. I think hopefully you can not eat for a solid hour. You know, you are welcome to eat before the show. You're welcome to eat at intermission, but I I think that most people, again, even most people that have a medical issue that they're dealing with, can go an hour without consuming food. So I'm going to generally say, please don't eat during the show. You are given more than enough time. You have all the day before you come. Get to the theater early and have a snack down in the lounge. There are always intermissions if a show goes over like an hour and 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that there are people out there who do have very specific health needs. For those people, I say absolutely do what you need to do and talk to an usher about it beforehand. But that's not going to be the majority of your audience. So as far as the majority of the audience is concerned, please don't. And the things that I've seen people bring full 3-course meals into theaters. I've seen people bring pizzas into theaters. It's like, just, you don't need to. Just like you can turn your phone off for the hour of the first act. It's a wonderful live experience. And unless there is a very specific emergency that you speak to somebody about before you come in, just please enjoy the show. Just enjoy the show. We go all that time without being able to eat or drink while we're performing for you. So,
exactly.
Well,
that was the correct answer.
Well, thank you.
So you got 3 out of 3. Congratulations.
Do I get a bonus question for that?
No, because I didn't come up with one. So you have 6 more seconds from your bio if you want to add anything.
Oh, well, I would highly recommend everybody check out my website. It's www.ashleygriffinofficial.com. That's ASHLEYGRIFFIN. Yes, Griffin like Gryffindor. Official.com. There's ways to contact me on there. There's information for licensing of my work and for my representation, but there's also information about my shows and just what I do. Lyra also has a website. It's Lyra, Lyra, themusical.com. And I am on pretty much all forms of social media. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter. My handles are at Ashley Griffin Official and at Ashley J. Griffin, respectively. And I have a podcast on the Onstage Network. So if you go there, my podcast is called Stage Directions. It's also available on iTunes. But yeah, and especially during these really difficult times, if anybody wants to be consuming art, let me know and I'm happy to help however I can. So, and if anybody has any burning questions that you'd like me to answer on my podcast, I'm happy to do that too. So send me a message.
It's a little more than 6 seconds, but I'll accept it. That's not a problem. And you know what? We will add your podcast to our website. We have
thank you.
We have a spot for other great podcasts, and I will add it there. We can talk offline about that. But yeah, I'm going to have to check that out now, and I encourage everybody else to check them out. So
thank you. We're actually looking for a sponsor for the podcast. If anybody's looking to sponsor an arts-related podcast, so
okay,
yeah,
we'll see what happens.
Well, and thank you for all the wonderful things that you're doing and for the wonderful promotion of wonderful art that you are doing.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ashley. Awesome. So that was Ashley Griffin here on Be Our Guest on Musical Theater Radio. Tune in next week as we speak to another guest or guests about their life, love, and passion that is musical theater. I am your host still, Jean-Paul Jovanoff, and I'll see you when I see you.